probably have one more board member arrive, and we have a forum, so we can go ahead and get started. First, welcome everyone who is in attendance today. We have a number of speakers. The way we're going to do that is when we call your name, come up and please speak at the podium, and there's a timer on the corner right up here. Now, given the number of speakers, I'm not trying to be rude, but we're going to be pretty strict on the time, okay? So just help us by watching that yourself while you're up there. I've said this each time, but we obviously have some new folks here. We don't typically comment in response to any public comments, so we're not ignoring you. That's just how we typically conduct a board meeting. And just remember, we're all neighbors, so let's be civil with each other, and we look forward to hearing your comments. We'll get started. The first item is to approve the agenda. I have a slight change to the agenda. Under the public comment section, we're going to move the speakers from the groups to the top. So Dr. Allison for Read Freely will speak first, and then Ms. Fallon for Moms for Liberty will speak second, and then we'll go in the order that they're listed. So with that change, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Second. All in favor? All right. Behind the agenda is a copy of the minutes from the last meeting. Everyone has an opportunity to review the minutes. Any questions, comments, corrections? There being none, can I have a motion to approve? Move to approve. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, minutes are approved. So we will begin with the public comments, and Dr. Allison, if you'll come up to the podium.
I know last meeting we turned it on and it's staying on, so just so you know why it's on. Okay. Dr. Allison, the timer's right here, and just let me know where it is.
Hello, my name is Dr. Marissa Allison. I'm a co-organizer with the Madison County chapter of Read Freely, Alabama. We're a grassroots organization of Alabama residents committed to keeping censorship out of our libraries. Our chapter has around 400 members here in Madison County and over 2,300 active members statewide. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, was born right here in Huntsville, and got my first library card when this branch opened in 1987. This place was magical to me then, and it's magical to my 5-year-old son now. I practice as a public sociologist, meaning that the scholarship that I do and advocacy work I do is committed to protecting public institutions from attacks like our libraries are facing right now. What I did not expect while keeping an eye on what was transpiring in Montgomery last year was that we would also end up facing battles from inside our library as well. My comments today on behalf of our group will address both sides of the moment we are in. The first time I came to speak to you all last September was the day after we learned that books inside the children's and young adult sections of the library were in the process of being recatalogued and moved out of those sections under the auspice that they were being reviewed for allegedly being sexually explicit. When news later broke that 99% of those materials were LGBTQ in content, we knew that we needed transparency. Let me be clear when I say to everyone here, there are no sexually explicit materials, much less pornographic materials, in the children's section of our libraries. LGBTQ plus content in the children's sections of our libraries is not sexually explicit. Moving books about families like mine that should be available for my son is censorship. Though we were glad when the library leadership decided to stop these efforts and move these materials back to their original locations, we still wanted transparency to understand what happened and why it did, as the APLS still has not compelled public libraries to do anything regarding their collections. On September 26th, I submitted a public records request to our library on behalf of our chapter. In our request, we asked the library to provide us with the following: all library board public meetings, committee meetings and executive minutes, agenda communication for the 2023 year up to the date of this request. All statements of concern and related communication, all internal library communications, including email and internal electronic messaging systems such as Slack, regarding the recataloging and moving of or releasing of materials for 2023 up to the date of the request. 2 weeks ago, on January 11th, I received a response from the library's outside counsel. The records I received were 3 documents in total, less than 1 page in length each. An email from Director Hewitt to the members of this board regarding the September board meeting, an agenda from that board meeting, and an email from the Director of Public Relations to the Cindy, which was, we assume, in preparation for that September board meeting. We were given nothing beyond these 3 documents and were told by the council, quote, pursuant to Alabama Code 36-1240, the library has withheld registration and circulation records and information concerning the use of the library. I submitted a question in response to the council to make sure those were the only documents we were supposed to receive and have not heard back. As we now assume that to be the case, we have officially responded to the library's outside counsel today, stating that we consider this request to be incomplete and our request will still be open. We would like the library to provide a more thorough response. I have included our email to the library's counsel in the packet of materials that we have for you all today. In the email, you will find that there is legal precedent surrounding this code in the case Chambers v. Birmingham News, which notes that there should be a liberal view of this code, and that exceptions should only be applied only in the cases where it is, quote, readily apparent that disclosure will result in undue harm or embarrassment to an individual, or where the public interest would clearly be adversely affected when weighed against the public policy considerations suggesting disclosure. When you apply the rule of reason, as this case instructs to our request, a reasonable person would not expect that the items we requested would fall under, quote, registration and circulation records and information concerning the use of the library, as mentioned in the email. Given that, we have asked the library's counsel to respond in the next 30 days from today's date with all the documents requested. In an effort to complete our own due diligence, we have received access to the library board public meeting agendas and minutes, which has been recently made publicly available on the library's website. We appreciate you all doing that. We sincerely want to be in alignment with our own library system, but we cannot move forward until we have the transparency that the public deserves. We do not want to further strain the library's finances by having to take legal action regarding our First Amendment rights, but we are prepared to do so if we have to. Now let me turn for my remaining time to some battles happening surrounding libraries in our state writ large. In a few minutes, I expect at least one of the representatives from the Madison County chapter of Moms for Liberty to get up here and share a quote involving sexual content from a book that may or may not be located in the young adult section of our library, which again is not the children's section of the library. It will likely be taken out of context and used to support their mission to advocate for sweeping changes to the material collection and location policies that you all have worked intentionally to create. Earlier this month, Moms for Liberty released a letter to the state legislature asserting themselves to be the self-selected spokespeople for Alabama families. In that letter, they paint a picture of Alabama libraries, the materials, and the professionals that work within them that is simply false. They share a story of a 9-year-old boy who was able to check out the book, All Boys Aren't Blue, from a branch of our library system. A book that was located in the young adult section of the library that is not for 9-year-old patrons. Yet they assert that the library and library staff should have served in loco parentis to make sure that this child didn't check out this book. These demands should be major red flags for us all as they move us in the direction of holding our library our librarians legally responsible for underage patrons. This is quite an odd assertion from an organization whose motto is, "We don't co-parent with the government." What they are asking of libraries says much to the contrary and is a slippery slope. In response to their letter, our chapter co-authored an open letter with the Tennessee Valley Progressive Alliance. We shared that letter with Alabama-based organizations for them to sign on to. We currently have 22 Alabama-based advocacy organizations representing 30,000 Alabamians who have signed on to the letter. You can read it in full in the packets we have put together for you all. Families that Read Freely have also released a petition last Friday to make sure those empowering our libraries know that we trust our librarians in the process that the library has in place, and that we don't co-parent with Moms for Liberty. We have nearly 1,000 Alabama families sign on to that petition in the 4 days that it has been up. It is also included in your packets. What all of this tells us is that those pushing for censorship of library materials based on their own prejudices and worldview are a vocal minority in our state. When the APLS board met today, the chair stated that they sent out a survey to Alabama libraries to assess how prevalent book challenges are in the state. Of the 84 libraries that responded, only 8 have reported any book challenges from April to December of last year. Obviously, library patrons are not concerned about this at the level Moms for Liberty and Clean Up Alabama would suggest. Tomorrow, the APLS will release its administrative code changes that Governor Ivey has proposed that would hold our libraries hostage to these censorship demands by withholding state funding. A 90-day public comment period will begin then, and we encourage each of you, even though you are board members and members of the public, to speak out in opposition to these changes by writing a letter rejecting them to the APLS board. Read Freely Alabama is ready to do just that as well. Thank you.
Ms. Cowell, you ready?
And I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of Moms for Liberty. For clarification on what we're going to be discussing today, here are some of the terms that I'm going to be using and their definitions. Book banning. According to the Free Speech Center at Middle Tennessee State University, quote, book banning, a form of censorship, occurs when private individuals, government officials, or organizations remove books from libraries, school reading lists, or bookstore shelves because they object to their content, ideas, or themes. Those advocating a ban complain typically that the book in question contains graphic violence, expresses disrespect for parents and family, is sexually explicit, exalts evil, lacks literary merit, is unsuitable for a particular age group, or includes offensive language, end quote. Moms for Liberty is not asking this board to ban any books from public libraries. In fact, I personally love some of the famously banned classics like To Kill a Mockingbird, which my own 14-year-old freshman son read this month. Rather, Moms for Liberty is asking the board to relocate books that, quoting from the definition above, are sexually explicit and unsuitable for young children. So let's define relocate. According to Merriam-Webster, relocate is a verb that means to move to a new location. We are not asking you to remove books from a public library. We are simply asking you to relocate the inappropriate books from the young adult section to the adult section. Censorship. The ACLU defines censorship as, quote, the suppression of words, images, or ideas that are offensive, end quote. Moms for Liberty is not asking for the suppression of offensive words or images simply for the sake of suppressing them from all peoples. We are asking for discernment from the board on what is appropriate for minors, those under the age of 18, given their developmental stages and mental capacity to understand traumatic sexual encounters described in detail, or gender-confusing ideology aimed at preschoolers and elementary-age children. It is not censorship to protect innocent young minds from the harsh realities of rape, incest, and exposure to pornographic images. Sexual encounters. According to the U.S. Code, Title 18, Section 2246, the term sexual act means contact between the penis and the vulva, or the penis and the anus. Contact between the mouth and the penis, the mouth and the vulva, or the mouth and the anus. The penetration, however slight, of the anal or genital opening of another by a hand or finger or by any object with the intent to abuse, humiliate, harass, degrade, or arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person. The term sexual contact means the intentional touching, either directly or through the clothing, of the genitalia, anus, groin, breast, inner thigh, or buttocks of any person, again with an intent to abuse, humiliate, harass, degrade, or arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person. These sexual encounters that I just listed, both heterosexual and homosexual, are described in detail in the following books that are currently still on your young adult shelves. Tricks by Ellen Hopkins, and all of her other novels, they all contain sexual encounters. All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. Those are just two of the books that members of Moms for Liberty have come across in the youth areas in this local public library system. Note that the young adult section is specifically for ages 12 to 18. I am not brave enough to stand in front of you and read excerpts from the book Tricks. I just can't. So I have printed copies of a few examples from that book that I will give to you, the board, to read for yourselves so that you may see what you have not relocated to the adult section. Some of you are aware of books containing sexually explicit content because last September, you asked the staff at each of the 10 branches to examine collections and move offensive materials to age-appropriate categories. In fact, I spoke at the board meeting in September to thank you for doing that. However, you apparently didn't have pushback from some of those branch librarians and staff, and in your press release on September 28, 2023, Jay Hickson said, quote, "Concerning staff and community feedback, the library has paused making any changes to the location of any books. Library staff and board members will continue to discuss any book challenges and keep the collection intact," end quote. It has been 4 months and 2 days. Have you had enough time to discuss? Books with sexual content aimed at children do not belong on these library shelves for children or young adults. Let me be extremely clear. In the last few years, the publication of materials targeting younger audiences are pushing the envelope not just with explicit sexual acts in young adult books now, but also with gender ideologies that go against those of nature and science. Books aimed at children birth to age 5. Yes, this is a public library. It's not a private collection or a church library. I get that. There will always be books in this library that members of Moms for Liberty do not agree with. Just like I hope there are pro-traditional family and conservative family values books in this library that other patrons may not agree with. But do not lose sight of the goal of the American Library Association, which is to push and promote transgenderism, Marxism, and gender ideologies that only serve to confuse children and create gender anxiety. And having these books on display and on the shelves for unsuspecting children to pick up and take home means that you are not being good stewards. Your own statement of concern says this, quote, "The role of the Huntsville Madison County Public Library is to provide opportunities that will allow individuals to freely examine subjects and make their own decisions. While customers are free to reject for themselves what they do not approve of, they cannot exercise this right of censorship to restrict the freedom of access to others," end quote. That sounds good, with one exception. Children are not developmentally mature enough to make that decision to reject for themselves what is inappropriate. Throughout history, we as a society have protected children from harmful things. The movie industry, for example, might be the closest relatable thing to compare with books. So let's consider a few movie titles and their rating. Sex and the City, the 2008 full-length movie, is rated R for strong sexual content, graphic nudity, and strong language. Brokeback Mountain is rated R for sexuality, nudity, and language. Bottoms, a 2023 comedy aimed at high schoolers, about high schoolers, is rated R for crude sexual content, pervasive language, and some violence, and yet most high schoolers can't go see it in a theater legally. Why? Because the movie industry has established a rating system based on content, and and what is appropriate versus not appropriate for particular ages. And rated R is restricted. If you are under the age of 17, you have to have an adult there with you. Now, can a family still stream an R-rated movie at home for their 9-year-old to see? Sure. But that same 9-year-old would need to be accompanied by an adult to legally see it in the theater. In the same way, the library needs to evaluate children's books for sexual content and then move those that are inappropriate to a place where parents are required to make that decision, yet where children are not exposed. So it's time, it's actually past time, for you to make the necessary changes to the policy and to take action. I think we can all agree that we care about the library. Each one of us is here because we have a love of the public library that we want to pass down to our children and grandchildren. However, keeping those books with sexual content in the children's department is taking the public library in the wrong direction, and it is not a safe place anymore. I cannot tell you how many of my friends that I've talked to about this don't even visit the public library anymore. Some gave it up years ago when their elementary kids checked out books with sexual content. Others, like myself, utilize the interlibrary loan option and only pick up and check out what I have pre-selected and vetted online. Some here will accuse moms like me of not being present with our kids at the public library. Let's get real. With multiple children, a mom can only be beside 1 or 2 at a time. For example, I would help my littles pick out a picture book while my 8 and 10-year-old would look for chapter books or vice versa. I did this 15 years ago, but I would not do it now because of what my children would find on the shelves and see long before we got to the checkout line. So we are asking you to take action to protect the minors that do still come to the library. In conclusion, Moms for Liberty is here to speak on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves, to be the voice for the innocent who cannot pull back quickly enough from exposure to pornographic images, to be the voice for the young teens who have been sexually assaulted themselves and are looking for a novel to read as an escape from the trauma, only to find their story or one similar graphically spelled out on the pages in front of them. Those kids need a trained therapist to walk through those situations with them, and not a book from the public library that someone thinks will be a good self-help guide because it's relatable. Oftentimes, relating is triggering. Can you share with us your timeline for completing the review of the current policy and when that will be put into action? Because it is time to make the public library a safe place of exploration for children birth to 18. Thank you. So these are copies, 3 stories that I. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Bellamy?
Okay. I want to remind everyone in this room that Alabama families want to read freely at our public libraries. Why do we advocate for this freedom so much? Well, public libraries are sadly one of the last places in America that anyone can access information without harassment. Like many people, this time of year I started on a health journey. All my Google searches on the topics were trying to sell me something. Websites full of misinformation, and my search ended up clogging up my feed with ads of diets I had no interest in. I did the same topic search here in the library catalog, and what I got back was an alphabetical list of books relevant to my goals. No ads, no shades, just facts. A few days ago, my friend and I were talking about how we were going to have the sex talk with our kids. As caring parents, we knew that Googling the topic would end up with all kinds of results. I knew that the public library would have solid, well-researched, age-appropriate books I and my children could use to learn and have conversations about this topic. We could pick and choose what books were relevant to our background and beliefs, and we have the freedom to not pick books that don't reflect our background, our culture, or belief. If we don't like a book on the subject, we simply do not check it out. My friend lamented that when she was growing up, the subject of even just puberty was taboo. She couldn't talk about it with her parents. As a first-generation Asian American, she longed to see herself portrayed in subjects and in books. Again, the library is where she turned, and it's still one of the only places for many people to find stories about themselves. I would hate for this access to information and representation to be limited. If a topic is not in the library in a relevant section, people will go elsewhere to find the information. I would rather have my child accessing information at the library than, for example, the internet, which is notorious for actual predators and wild misinformation. Logical access is also why groups like Read Freely want to continue to hold this library accountable for its history of moving books. Groups who call for censorship of books and threaten librarians are a very small group. They already have private places where they can choose to censor it. The library does not need to censor itself for them. Do not bow down to these threats, for they limit Alabama families from accessing books and being able to read freely.
Mr. McCormick?
I'm here to make two clear statements. First, I do not agree with and I'm not asking for banning books. Second, I do not believe books written for certain readers, like gender questions or other sexual concerns. I believe they should be relocated where interested people can find them and where uninterested people can avoid them. My name is Greg McCormick. I moved to Madison City last year with my wife and 7-year-old daughter. We moved here looking for a good Christian community and a safe place to raise my daughter. Why I'm here today is a recent experience. A friend, a neighbor of mine, told me that his kindergarten daughter came home from school. It's the same school that my daughter goes to, with a book called When Aiden Became a Brother. The opening of this book called When Aiden Became a Brother, the book opening line states, when Aiden was born, everyone thought he was a girl. Gender questioning in a children's book, made available and given to a kindergartner to take home. Why is this book here? This book is also in our public library. What were the intentions here? My daughter is a new reader, and so we have visited the Madison City Library on many occasions in the past. I've expected the library to be a trusted resource for parents and children to enjoy. But now I'm very concerned about her exposure to inappropriate books. We all should agree that not all situations are appropriate for discussions with young children. And when they do arise, it is up to the parents' discretion to address them. But to allow books like these to be seeded into the public library with no discretion. I understand all libraries have many choices in which books to bring onto their shelves. My question is, why these books? When there are public libraries, become a tool to indoctrinate to and undermine parents. As a concerned parent and a current library user, I'm asking the library this question. Thank you.
Stewart?
Hi, I'm Susan Stewart. I've lived in Huntsville for 35 years. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I've brought a Huntsville Madison County Public Library fundraising poster from the early 1990s to show you. It's beautiful. It shows the services that were available in our main library at that time. Books, of course, videotapes, those, computer access, much more. And down at the bottom, checking out a stack of books, are my 3 children and me. We were at the library so much we made it onto the poster. What an innocent time it was for us. I felt the library was a safe space for my children to browse freely through the children's section. I'm not sure I would feel that way these days, because I'm not sure my kids and I would feel welcome, knowing that an attempt had been made to hide certain books from them. My children were allowed to pick out their own books. Often they chose books I would not have chosen for them, and so they learned a lot of stuff I didn't know. Because of that, my kids are much smarter and more knowledgeable than I am. I congratulated myself for being such a great parent until I learned I wasn't. 25 years after this poster was created, I learned one of my children had struggled with their gender identity since they were very young. They didn't have the knowledge or vocabulary to understand their own feelings or to talk about them. I didn't know I needed to talk to my kids about gender identity. It wasn't on my radar, and there weren't any books about it for them to discover in the children's section back then. I wish there had been books for my children to find that would have filled in the gaps in my knowledge. Thankfully, my child survived. The rate of suicide attempts among LGBTQ teens is more than twice the rate among all U.S. teens, due mainly to family rejection and bullying. It is well documented that lives have been saved by children and teens finding books on their own while browsing in the library. Books that teach understanding and acceptance. Books that save them from self-loathing. Books that have been evaluated for placement in the appropriate section by our well-trained librarians. And books that some of their parents would have preferred they didn't read. That's why I was surprised and disappointed that an attempt was made to move books like these to places where children couldn't find them on their own, which the ACLU and other civil rights organizations and library organizations say that moving books to limit access equates to censorship. And that decision to move them happened without transparency. I still don't know exactly what happened. We don't have all the information that was requested that could shed light on the reasoning and process behind this decision. There are some parents, a minority, who want to prevent their children from reading books that include or are about LGBTQ people, survivors of sexual abuse, and the history of our country, including slavery and racism. That is their right, but it is their responsibility to supervise what their children read. I didn't co-parent with the government. I didn't expect governments and libraries to supervise what my children read for me. It is not the job of governments and libraries to harm children by censoring books. Thank you.
Jones?
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Jones, and I lead the Moms for Liberty chapter here in North Alabama. There's a lot of inaccurate information out there about our organization, so I'll begin by clearing up a few things with that. First, our mission is to fight for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. We were founded by moms who witnessed destructive policies being implemented in public agencies that directly hurt children and families. It's been 3 years since Moms for Liberty was founded and 18 months since I started our local chapter. Over the past 7 months, I have personally witnessed these same destructive policies in our communities, specifically in this library system. I and organizations I am associated with were nearly canceled this past summer due to free speech restrictions. As much as I may disagree with other viewpoints, one thing I always support is a person's free speech. So nothing I am suggesting today is intended to suppress opposing viewpoints. Free speech applies to everyone where it does not apply at all. What I am suggesting today is a policy change that enforces parental consent. When a 9-year-old can pick up an adult graphic novel, genderqueer, from the second to the bottom shelf next to a Marvel comic is clearly intended to attract young eyes and minds. As a parent that's actively involved in my child's life, I wouldn't even begin to suspect such a sexually explicit graphic book would ever be placed next to a Marvel comic book. Yet it did happen. I'm asking for a simple change that enforces parental consent when young children are checking out books. Simply require a parent to consent to the books a child is checking out if the book exceeds the age range for the child's library card. This is not a big ask. It's a simple policy that helps parents understand what's happening in their child's lives. As several have mentioned before, their children suffer issues that they were not aware of. Imagine what would happen if a parent had to be involved in checking out that book at the age of 9. The things a parent could learn simply by having to check out that book. Thank you.
This person?
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I've noticed more and more over the past few years that books dealing with age-inappropriate content are being placed in the children's area of the library. As a mother of 3, I have a firm grasp of what children understand at what age. And I think a child's innocence is to be ferociously defended. Material, both written and illustrated, that is sexual in nature should never be displayed and available for a child to discover. Children can be confused and frightened by subjects far above their age or understanding. Children don't understand sex, nor have any interest in it. There's no reason that a book in the children's section should be addressing topics like gender confusion, or sexual behavior in kids, or even child rape. Books with extremely graphic illustrations are especially concerning. The pictures in some of the questionable books would certainly be porn if they weren't hand-drawn. I am wondering what the standard is for placing age-appropriate books in our system. I think that if something is deemed appropriate, then there must be a standard, a dividing line for inappropriate. If a parent thinks that Playboy or Penthouse is okay for their kids, do we provide it? I don't think so. There are millions of books in print. How does our system choose which books to purchase with the finite space we have available at our branches? How are books placed that are in the children's section? How are they curated? Is it a publisher or ALA's recommendations? Is it local decision making? I don't know. Why not have a defined rule where a book is placed on the shelves? Have a rating system, much like movies and even music has explicit on the lyrics. Even libraries place filters on computers. Surely the library could implement a rating system for books to help determine which areas to place them. I'm not saying the books need to be banned or even removed from the library. I'm saying books with blatant sexual themes and explicit pictures need to be totally removed from the children's section and moved to older teen or adult sections. If a parent wants their child to read the book, it will still be available to them. This way a child doesn't accidentally read or view damaging material. I'd also like to see age restrictions on children's cards. If they are below the age for the rating of the book, parents should be required to finish that checkout process. Since many kids use the self-checkout feature, this stopgap can make sure that they aren't taking home mature books. To end, I'd like to ask, what purpose does it serve to introduce these concepts to kids? Why would adults be so determined to get graphic content in kids' hands? To desensitize them to adult-child sexual interactions or any sex involving children? Why would you as a library board be so determined to get this material in our kids' hands? I mean, when did we lose our way? There is right now discussions in I believe the Senate, possibly the House, I'm not sure, in Alabama government to be able to fire board members. Keep that in mind.
Charlotte Gay?
My name is Charlotte Gay, and my husband, 6-year-old daughter, and I are frequent patrons of the Huntsville Madison County Public Library. I'm here today to share my concerns over a few titles available in the teen department of the Madison Library. The first title I want to discuss with you is Sex Plus, Learning, Living, and Enjoying Your Body by Lacey Green. I want to name a few of the chapters in this book for you. Masturbation and Orgasm, Sex Toys, Your Sexual Debut, Sexploration, and Kink. In this book, the author goes into graphic detail describing the various ways one can experience sexual pleasure on their own and with a partner. This includes, and is not limited to, various sex toys available on the market. This is found within a section titled Visiting the Sex Shop. Tips on how to participate in safer sexting and sending nude photos, and suggestions on how to get sex exploring. In the chapter entitled Kink, readers are invited to, quote, take a walk through the colorful world of kink, fetishes, and BDSM. The book goes on to describe various sexual acts, such as hand jobs, oral sex, and anal sex. The author has also included a guide on how to have a healthy relationship with porn. The next title is A Quick and Easy Guide to Sex and Disability, a graphic novel by A. Andrews. This book provides pages of cartoons of adults living with disabilities exploring sexual acts with others. There are pages in this book devoted to different sexual positions, lubricants, sexual furniture designed to increase pleasure, and sex toys. Again, this book is shelved in the teen room at Madison Library. I'm presenting these materials to you today as a sample of what can be found in this section of the Madison Library. Because my statement is limited to 3 minutes today, I am unable to provide you with details of several other titles in the same location with similar content. I'm not naive, and I realize that some teenagers will engage in sexual activity, regardless of the fact that it should only occur between consenting adults. However, there is a line between providing sexual education to teens in an effort to curb numbers of teen pregnancies and STDs and outright encouragement of sexual activity and potentially harmful behaviors. I believe that by making these materials available to teens, that's underage children between the ages of 12 and 18, the library has crossed that line. These books invite readers to have multiple sexual partners, transmit nude photographs, and explore pornography. By shelving these books in the teen room, the Madison Library is encouraging minors to participate in these activities, some of which would be illegal. The library needs to move these materials and other items like them to the adult section where they belong. Thank you.
Kevin Jones?
He's not.
All right. That concludes our public comments. Thanks to everyone that participated. We're going to move on to the Finance Committee report. Brad, are you ready to go right now?
Yes. As far as the Finance Committee report goes, got a summary of the financials right there. Being that we are in that last quarter for the fiscal year, for the calendar year, just got a little bit of reports in there, their audit. Financial reports there's different actual versus budget. We should do some more information as well for the other pages that are reflected here in the report as well. But that's for presentation.
Any questions for Brad on the finance report? All right, I think we have an RFP that we need to vote on.
Yeah, there's an RFP for cleaning services, and just comes to recommendation from the committee.
All right, we have an RFP for cleaning services for North Ranch. The committee reviewed that RFP, approved it, and recommended it to the board. Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor? All right, that is approved. And then we have an update regarding the audit.
Yeah, the audit is underway. It started, and it's not ready yet, but could potentially be ready for the next meeting.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Brad before we move to governance? Melissa, governance committee?
Sure. On page 21 in your packet are the proposed board meeting dates for this year. We have a recommendation of moving those to Tuesday afternoon instead of Wednesday to accommodate kind of a standing conflict for Renee. So like we've done in the past, we will move our meetings around. We're recommending to move our meetings around. Three will be at the downtown branch, one will be in Madison, one will be in South Huntsville, and one will be in North Huntsville. So you'll see there on page 21 the recommended meeting dates, and this actually gives them referred to.
Okay, any questions or comments about those dates?
It's coming as a recommendation from governance.
All right, it's recommended by the committee. Do I have a motion?
So,
Second? Second. All in favor?
uh,
All right, calendar's approved. Tell us about the board annual assessment.
Yes, and actually I jumped over one thing too, I apologize. So committee appointments for 2024, basically all of our committee leadership is going to continue for an additional year, which translates to finance. Governance is recommending Brad Garland continue as chair, Carla Clift continue as vice chair. For governance, I will continue as chair for another year, and G.W. Boone will be vice chair. Governmental relations will be chair Renee Bartlett and vice chair Doug Markinson. these appointments would just continue for an additional year, for what is already serving in those roles. So that's, I don't think that's a matter of vote, it's just a matter of information. Then, the final thing from coming from governance today is the board self-assessment questionnaire. We've been, kind of working on this for a little bit, and it's a matter of us being able to, as a board, evaluate how we're doing. Are we doing our jobs correctly? And so what you see beginning on page 22 is the board self-assessment questionnaire. Thank you to GW for kind of taking the lead on this, and it was just lots of different input on this particular assessment tool. And so we'll be working with Dorothy to distribute the questionnaire and to collect the feedback so that it'll remain anonymous. And are there any questions on the questionnaire? It's just, it's coming as a vote for us to do, just again, so we as a board will know areas we need to continue to work on to fulfill our responsibilities better. So it's coming as a recommendation from governance to do the board self-assessment, and then report the results back, and then we can evaluate if there's additional information or additional things we need to work on. So this is coming as a recommendation.
So that goes out of committee. Do I have a motion? Second? Second. All in favor? GW, thank you. I know how much work. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Brooke, are you ready for the foundation report?
Yeah, the board voted last week to grant 10 branch grants in a total of $60,680. That's going to fund neurodiversity training, some sensory kits, summer reading, some books, and we're just very excited to have that. We just got the check signed and submitted to the library today. What is the amount? $16,680. And then Love Your Library is a campaign the foundation's doing for the month of February again. Our goal is to raise $15,000, and that will go towards schools.
All right, any questions for Brooke? We appreciate what the foundation does. Thank you for everything you all do to support us. Cindy, are you ready to be executive director?
Okay, so, November, December, which are traditionally slower months for us in the holidays, but not necessarily slower months for us. We're looking at the purple line for the current year, and this is kind of a short line because it starts with October 1. You can see we're above certain where we were this time last year on the same 2 months. And there's a list of books that are the top circulating books I thought y'all would find interesting. There's Joseph Coe book and one by Barbara Kingsolver. And then the top circulating book for the Judy's was Don't Let the Pigeon Drop the Rust by Mo Willems. The highest demand book was The Exchange After the Firm by John Grisham. John Grisham and James Paxton kind of find but John's got it this couple of months because he had a good book out and it was post the firm, the original book he wrote. As per usual, circulation stays about the same for all the branches. Our whole locker continues to ramp up its circulation. We had all the lockers full in the last week, and we added, we're up to 40, over 40 lockers, and they're all full. So that Paul's locker at the Mark Russell Center continues to be a popular destination place for library books, and for people to pick them up conveniently. Library visitors, again, more visitors than we've had in the last couple of years in the same time frame. The week of November 12th was our highest traffic over the November. Our lowest traffic was obviously Christmas week. We were closed 2 of those days, so that makes logical sense. The branches remain the same, consistent, so who's going where. There is an uptick of Triana and Cam are seeing more visitors coming in there to those 2 locations, primarily because of their after-school program they're doing in conjunction with local daycare facilities. All right, downloadables off the charts as usual. We did add a whole bunch of new Blast musicians to our Blast streaming music platform. So we've had the highest number of streams ever in its history when it started in 2021. And Canopy streams have also doubled since last year. It's a service we offer. It's a metered service for movies. Most of those are like great courses and older movies, classics on that channel. And you can see audiobooks continue to be our top book was Suzanne Collins' about the Songbirds and Snakes, which is a sequel to the Hunger Games. Also a very popular series. Okay, program attendance. Traditionally, we go down in November, December. Thus, this slowed down on the numbers, but again, we still had our highest program attendance. Madison had an era New Year's Eve party, 250 people at that party. Lots of, disco influence in the whole event. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot of great pictures. And then the most popular event always is our story time. We had 270 events across all locations. This one is actually an outreach program that was done on the schools. This is our outreach and ready readers with the preschools in, I think that's Midtown. If you'll notice Renee's in the background there, the Madison City Council was walking through observing something and just happened to be come across the library program happening in the school. And then I want to give you some strategic plan highlights. I've got about 3 slides. We've been doing it quite a bit. Orion Amphitheater reached out to us to participate in the Rocket City Reading Fest, which is going to be on March 10th. It's going to be at the amphitheater. It's a very big event. They're going to promote the library. They're going to promote summer reading. Kansas City Playhouse will be there putting on performance skits out of classical literature. And there will be some local authors having readings for their books. We're excited to partner with them. We'll have the bookmobile there and be handing out promotional information about our summer reading program. We talked last meeting about our staff meetings and training on dealing with more diverse patrons and starting up those story times in a more across the system way. And we, Courtney found a partner with UAH Regional Autism Network to provide the training we need for free. They have a federal grant to do outreach and training, so they're coming to us and doing a day-long seminar with our staff. And we'll be working with them in partnership so that if people need their services, because they provide services to families with children with special needs, we can refer them back to them. So it's a mutual partnership. And they're also going to provide some materials for us to have in our collection of autism and mental health resources. So we're getting all the benefits, but it's going to be a great partnership. And that training is happening in February. South Huntsville is part of one of their foundation grants is developing memory care kits. So we're going from preschoolers to seniors here. And they're going to be circulating these pre-assembled take-home kits to help adults of any age who face memory challenges. So we're excited about that. They're splitting the cost between their Friends of the Library and the Foundation grant to do that. Another grant we received was through the Verdant Fund, and actually the grant went to the artist, Kenny Watson, but she is teaching those classes, arts classes at North Huntsville, working with our makerspace librarian there to do, I think they do like wet felting, animals, last time, just a lot of arts and crafts, because there's lots of great pictures around that. And then we entered a partnership with Great State for ESL and GED training. We have had a partnership with Calhoun College here, Community College here at downtown, and Great State approaches, because again, this is some federal grant money, they have to do this ESL. It actually pays for staff, curriculum, and computers that are needed to teach. So we wanted to expand beyond north and downtown, and they wanted to be out in the county. So they're actually going to include Hazel Green and Gurley and North in that training. And that won't start till later in the year, but they're getting staff up and trained. We just provide the place and the students, and they'll do all the work. We've been doing this with Calhoun now for a couple of years, and so now we'll have 2 partners on this, Calhoun and Gray, working with both colleges. So excited to be working with them and providing this kind of training. Ready for that to get fully staffed. Last year, we partnered with Calhoun Community College and UAH to do what was called a common reading. Calhoun wanted to do this with their students and have all their students and faculty read the same book and for a whole semester and do various programs around that. And they asked the library to be a partner and to do our own programming around that. We very successfully had that last year, had a great great turnout at the library programs, and then the public was able to go to the school programs as well. Limited tickets, but they're still able to go participate here, nationally known authors. This year, they come back to us and said, hey, you want to do it again? We're going to do it again this fall. We said yes, and they're focusing on disabilities as the theme. They'll come up with a theme, a catchy theme title soon. We're doing disability, I said that right, disabilities is the main book, and then they're doing the new James McBride book that I forgot right now. I don't even remember that hotel. It's on the bestseller list. I put myself on hold for it. It's people. Having a grocery store, thank you. And he's trying to get James McBride to come do the keynote speaker for that one. And it will be open to the public as well. So we're excited about that, and I'm on hold for that one because I'm copies because I've waited a long time for it. So I think I'm like number 60. The last thing I wanted to talk about was I already said kindergarten. I'm trying to go to the website and wait here. Let's see if I can get this short. We are starting this back in January. It's a 10-week program for 3 to 5-year-olds. This is a grant we got from LSTA for this year that y'all approved. And it's teaching a series of 10 weeks of classes to get children ready for kindergarten. And we are going to be, doing all 10 weeks. We're going to be 4, I think, right now. 4, I think so. But we're going to repeat the cycle 3 times. So and it's in all branches, pretty much every branch, different times. So people can go, and then all these links are to the kids, so you can do some follow-up work at home with your child. It's got, worksheets and things you can do with your child, as well as recommended books. So we've been started this back at the beginning of January, and we'll be continuing this through 2 more cycles. So we'll get kindergarten readiness up to the beginning of the school year. So just wanted to let y'all know about that. And this is on our webpage, so any parent can go and find this information and find out where the classes are, and then just participate as each week comes up. So, and that's my last one.
Any questions for Cindy? All right, thank you for that. Any other?
For that last slide, is there a space constraint at all?
In some locations, it's, I think South ran out of room, but it's being offered every week at every location. So if you can't go one, you can go to another. They're all at different times, so they're not all at the same time. So if you go along there, you can find the weekly schedule and pick one that works for you.
Okay, and are you allowed to go, like if you miss week 1 or 2, you just start over?
Oh, yeah, you can go any week. You just jump in, because it's a different topic every week, and then we'll cycle back through it again. You'll have 2 more opportunities if you miss it. And the materials are there, so if you want to just do it on your own, you just miss the staff instructions, story time that we would have done with it. So you can still use all the same materials are there to access.
All right, anything else for Cindy? Any other business to come before the board for other board members? All right, there being none, our next meeting is March the 19th at 4 p.m. We'll be at the Madison Public Library. There being no further business, we'll stand adjourned.